Hello, Roman Karbanov here from Synthesit. Recently I came across some news from 2023. It was about taurine being called a new elixir of life. Even though it was an old news, the headlines really caught my attention. So I started digging. I asked some AI models about taurine, what is it, what it does, and what research is out there. I even found the original source, a study published in journal Science, and the results at first glance were absolutely amazing. In short, mice that were given taurine as a supplement lived 10 to 12% longer, and their so-called life expectancy increased by a huge 18 to 25%. These numbers are incredible. I've never seen anything like this. But here's the thing, this didn't turn into a long-lasting sensation. People didn't rush out to buy taurine, so I've decided to figure out why. Let's take a closer look at what they actually discovered in the study. So here's the thing, scientists found that the amount of taurine in the blood decreases as we get older. This drop is especially sharp after the age of 50, and you can see it right here on the graph, marked with a green arrow. Naturally, the researchers wondered, if we give body extra taurine from supplement, could we see an improvement in overall health? Now, of course, they couldn't run a super long-term study like this on people because it would last decades, maybe 70 or 80 years, so they've conducted the study on mice instead. They divided mice into two groups, a control group and an experimental group. The experimental group got extra taurine in their diet. And here's the interesting chart the scientists came up with. The blue line on the graph represents the mice from the control group that didn't get any extra supplement, just their regular diet. And the orange line shows the mice that were given taurine. As you can see, they lived significantly longer. What's also important is that they started dying much later than control group. The horizontal axis shows the months they lived, and the vertical axis is percentage of mice that survived. So what we see is that the group fed with taurine is ahead of control group at every stage of the graph. Now getting back to humans, it is known that taurine helps with weight loss, specifically reducing body fat. Taking taurine also helps preserve muscle mass, and it lowers overall blood sugar levels. And this is reliably known not from the mouse studies but from researchers on people. There's absolutely no doubt about these three properties of taurine because they've been confirmed by tons of studies. I want to highlight this point because I'm going to come back to this later. But that's not all. Computer tomography scans of bone tissues in the different groups of people who took between 500 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams of taurine shows a clear trend, an increase in bone density. And bone density is actually one of the markers of aging. So this data is obtained from human studies. And I'll come back to this point later as well. And what really amazed me both in the article itself and among all the reviewers on YouTube is that based on some indirect evidence, they all cautiously suggest that the way taurine works is somehow linked to stem cells. Basically, they've concluded that taurine somehow stimulates the production of stem cells. They base this on the data showing a reduction in number of senescent or aging cells. Let me remind you, when we are born, we have a very high number of stem cells. As we grow up, that number decreases. And the older we get, the more number of stem cells in our bone marrow and our body drops. And I was struck by this sheer reverence both from authors and the various YouTubers towards the possibility that taurine might actually increase the number of stem cells. Now take a look at this picture. These are from a study by Institute of Medical Primatology. This image shows the density of bone marrow, which is where stem cells are born and then released into our blood and body. This is our study of Synthesit on mice. Here's the thing, in our research on the effect of Synthesit on the bone marrow of mice, we directly proved the huge increase in the number of stem cells in the bone marrow. No indirect data needed, but we had both indirect data from human studies and this direct proof. And this is the level of gene expression growth when taking our supplement Synthesit. If you type any of these gene names in Google, you will be absolutely shocked by their effects. This data was obtained in the study by German research center Macrolife Biotech. Here's the thing, I found a lot of common ground between Synthesit and Taurine. Taurine also got some phenomenal data, though let's be honest, not as phenomenal as ours. They had great international team of scientists, and we also had research conducted by a large international group of scientists. However, in both cases, you can't say the result attracted major attention from the press or scientific community. The main criticism of Taurine research that I found concerns the fact that these are studies on mice, not on humans. And this is important. This is what led to news headlines like this: a worm, a mouse, or a monkey. Nobody wants to associate themselves with these creatures. But here's the key point. No one can prove the opposite either. There's no research proving that taurine doesn't work on human the same way it does on other organisms. It's just foolish to deny the effects of human, because I've mentioned 3 effects proven by many different researchers. A proper experiment on people would have to last for decades. For me personally, the data from a study on taurine effects is more than enough. The criticism of the research is just unreasonable. It usually comes down to the fact that taurine levels in humans can vary by an order of magnitude, meaning up to 10 times. However, if you look at this picture, the bottom scale is the person's age, and the scale on the left is concentration of taurine. Even despite the huge differences, the levels still decrease with age. Maybe not as uniformly as in mice and monkeys, but the average line clearly shows the decline in taurine levels. But here's what's interesting. Our supplement might have even more powerful effect, and we have even more direct proof of it. Check out our research section on the website. Ask your question regarding taurine and Synthesit and suggest topics. I'll try to make videos about them. Thank you very much. Goodbye.